The war was going badly. Everyone knew it, but no one wanted to say it out loud. For 3 long years, the Galactic Defense Coalition had been fighting the Void Swarm, and they were losing ground every single day. Dr. Yuna stood in front of the massive viewing window in her laboratory, watching the distant stars flicker like dying candles. Behind her, the soft hum of machines filled the air. Her team of scientists worked quietly at their stations, their faces lit by the blue glow of computer screens. Station Omega-7 was not like other space stations. It floated in the darkness near a dying red star, hidden from the rest of the galaxy. The Coalition had built it in secret, far from prying eyes and enemy scouts. This was where they did the work that others might call impossible or even wrong. "Doctor, the genetic samples are ready," called out Dr. Kang, one of her assistants. He was young, barely out of the academy, but his hands never shook when working with dangerous materials. Yuna turned away from the window and walked to the central laboratory. In the middle of the room stood a large glass chamber filled with green liquid. Tubes and wires connected it to dozens of machines that beeped and whirred constantly. The chamber was empty now, but soon it would hold their greatest creation. "Are you sure about this?" asked Dr. Lee, an older woman who had worked with alien biology for 20 years. "We are mixing human DNA with Void Swarm genetic material. No one has ever tried this before." Yuna nodded slowly. The swarm creatures are perfect killers. They adapt to any environment, heal from almost any wound, and never stop hunting their prey. But they have one weakness. She walked to another table, where samples of swarm tissue floated in containment fields. The dark, oily substance seemed to move on its own, reaching toward the edges of its prison. "They only know how to destroy," Yuna continued. "They cannot think beyond their basic programming. That is why we are adding human elements to the mix. Creativity, problem solving, the ability to make choices." Dr. Kang looked nervous. "But what if we create something we cannot control?" "Then we make sure we can control it," Yuna replied firmly. "We will build in safeguards, command codes, shutdown protocols. This creature will be our weapon, not our master." The process took 6 hours. Yuna and her team carefully combined genetic material from 3 different sources. Human DNA provided intelligence and adaptability. Void Swarm genetics gave the creature strength and regenerative abilities. The third component came from the Catharan archives, ancient biological templates that had been studied for decades. As they worked, alarms sounded from other parts of the galaxy. The swarm had broken through another defense line. Entire colonies were going dark, their populations either dead or converted into more swarm creatures. The Coalition fleet was spread too thin, trying to protect too many worlds with too few ships. "We need this to work," muttered Dr. Lee as she adjusted the growth chamber settings. "If Subject 47 fails, there might not be another chance." The green liquid in the chamber began to bubble and swirl. Deep inside, something was taking shape. At first, it looked like nothing more than a dark spot floating in the center, but as the hours passed, the spot grew larger and more complex. Yuna watched the monitors carefully. The creature's vital signs were strong. Its brain activity showed patterns unlike anything they had seen before, human-like in some ways, but alien in others. The swarm DNA was integrating perfectly with the other genetic material. "Growth rate is exceeding projections," reported Dr. Kang. "Subject 47 will reach full size in 12 hours instead of the expected 24. "That is acceptable," Yuna said. "The faster we can deploy it, the better." But as she spoke, warning lights began flashing on her control panel. The creature's brain activity was spiking beyond normal parameters. Its body was developing faster than the computer models had predicted. "Something is wrong," Dr. Lee said, her voice tight with worry. "The neural pathways are forming too quickly. The consciousness integration process is not supposed to happen until after full growth." Yuna leaned over the controls, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "It may be the human DNA. Humans develop consciousness earlier than other species. The creature might be waking up ahead of schedule." Inside the chamber, Subject 47 was now clearly visible. It stood nearly 2 meters tall, with a humanoid shape, but covered in dark, armored skin. Its arms ended in hands that could form either fingers or razor-sharp claws. Its head was sleek and elongated, with large eyes that remained closed. "Should we slow down the process?" asked Dr. Kang. Before Yuna could answer, more alarms began sounding. These were not from their laboratory, but from the station's main communication center. A priority message was coming through from Coalition Command. "Dr. Yuna, report to the command center immediately," announced Commander Jinwoo over the intercom. "We have received new intelligence about swarm movements. They are heading toward the Kepler system. 2 billion civilians need evacuation." Yuna looked at the growth chamber. Subject 47 was almost ready, but not quite. They needed at least 6 more hours to complete the process safely. "Continue monitoring," she told her team. "I will be back as soon as possible. Do not make any major adjustments without my approval." As she left the laboratory, Yuna did not notice the small tremor that ran through Subject 47's body. The creature's eyes opened for just a moment, revealing intelligence and confusion in equal measure. Then they closed again. But the damage was done. Consciousness had taken hold earlier than anyone expected. In the growth chamber, Subject 47 began to dream. But they were not the dreams of a weapon. They were the dreams of something caught between human and monster, trying to understand what it was and why it existed. The green liquid continued to bubble around the creature as it grew. Stronger by the hour, soon it would be ready to face the universe. The question was whether the universe was ready to face it. Outside the laboratory windows, the dying star pulsed with fading light, as if counting down to something momentous. In a few hours, everything would change. The perfect weapon was almost complete. But perfect weapons, as Yuna would soon learn, do not always behave the way their creators expect. Minho was having a terrible day, and it was about to get much worse. He crawled through the maintenance shaft above Corridor 7, his toolbox clanking behind him. The ventilation system on Station Omega 7 had been making strange noises for 3 days, and nobody else wanted to fix it. Being the newest maintenance engineer on the station meant getting all the jobs that others avoided. The shaft was hot and cramped. Sweat dripped from his forehead as he checked each connection point. Most of the station's crew never thought about the people who kept their air clean and their lights working. They just expected everything to function perfectly while they did their important scientific work. "At least it pays well," Minho muttered to himself in Korean, then switched to Galactic Standard as he recorded his findings on his tablet. The pay was good because stations like Omega 7 were dangerous places to work. Not many people wanted to live near dying stars doing secret military projects. He had been working for 2 hours when the first alarm started ringing, then another. Within seconds, the entire station was filled with the sound of emergency sirens. Red lights flashed in, the maintenance shaft making everything look like the inside of a nightmare. Minho stopped working and listened carefully. These were not drill alarms. He had heard enough of those to know the difference. This was the real thing. Something very bad was happening somewhere on the station. His radio crackled to life. "All non-essential personnel report to emergency. Stations immediately. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." But Minho was stuck. The maintenance shaft was too narrow to turn around in, and he was still 50 meters from the nearest exit. He had no choice but to keep crawling forward, toward Corridor 7. That was when he heard the screaming. It was not human screaming. The sound was deeper, more animal-like, filled with confusion and rage. It echoed through the metal walls of the station like thunder. Then came other sounds. The crash of braking equipment, the sharp whine of energy weapons firing, shouted, orders from security teams. Minho crawled faster. Whatever was happening, he wanted to be somewhere else when it reached his section of the station. But as he moved, the sounds got louder instead of quieter. The fighting was spreading throughout the station. He finally reached the exit point above Corridor 7 and carefully removed the access panel. The corridor below looked empty, but he could see scorch marks on the walls and broken glass scattered across the floor. The air smelled like burned electronics and something else he could not identify. Minho dropped down from the shaft and grabbed his toolbox. He needed to reach the nearest emergency station, but that meant walking through 3 more corridors. He started moving as quietly as possible, staying close to the walls and listening for any sign of danger. He made it halfway through the 2nd corridor when he heard footsteps. But they were not normal footsteps. Each one shook the floor like a heavy machine walking. They were getting closer. Minho looked around for somewhere to hide, but the corridor was almost empty. Just smooth walls and a few doorways that led to locked storage rooms. He pressed himself against the wall and hoped whatever was coming would pass by without noticing him. The footsteps stopped just around the corner. For a moment, everything was quiet except for the distant sound of alarms. Then something large stepped into view. Minho had never seen anything like it. The creature stood over 2 meters tall, covered in dark armor that seemed to be part of its skin. Its arms were longer than human arms, ending in hands that could become either fingers or claws. Its head was smooth and elongated, with large eyes that glowed faintly in the red emergency lighting. The creature looked confused and angry. It moved its head from side to side as if trying to understand where it was. Sparks fell from damaged equipment on its shoulders, and green liquid dripped from its arms. This was clearly something that had broken out of a laboratory. Minho knew he should run. Every instinct told him to turn around and get as far away as possible. But something stopped him. The way the creature moved reminded him of an animal he had once found as a child. A dog that had been hit by a car and was lying in the road, scared and hurt and not understanding what had happened to it. The creature noticed him and turned in his direction. Its glowing eyes focused on his face. Minho could see intelligence there, but also fear and confusion. This was not a mindless monster. It was something that was aware of itself but did not understand what it was or where it was. Instead of running, Minho raised his hands slowly to show he was not carrying any weapons. He took a small step forward, the way he had approached that injured dog years ago. "It is okay," he said softly in Korean, then repeated it in Galactic Standard. "You are safe now. No one is going to hurt you." The creature tilted its head, listening to his voice. It took a step back but did not attack or run away. Minho continued talking, keeping his voice calm and gentle. "You are scared, are you not? I understand. This place is confusing. There are too many loud noises and bright lights." He took another small step forward. The creature watched him carefully but did not move away this time. "My name is Minho," he said. "I work here. I fix things when they break. Maybe I can help fix whatever is wrong." The creature made a sound that was almost like a whimper. It looked down at its own arms, at the green liquid still dripping from them, as if seeing itself for the first time. Minho realized that this creature had probably just been born, in whatever way such things were born. It was like a newborn baby, but in the body of something designed to be a weapon. No wonder it was confused and frightened. He took one more step forward, close enough now to reach out and touch the creature if he wanted to. This was incredibly dangerous. The creature could kill him without even trying hard, but something in its eyes told him it did not want to hurt anyone. "You do not have to be afraid," Minho said gently. "I am not afraid of you." That was not entirely true. He was terrified, but he was also fascinated. This creature was clearly artificial, probably created in one of the secret laboratories on the station, but it was also alive and aware and experiencing emotions just like any other living being. Slowly, carefully, Minho reached out his hand and placed it on the creature's armored shoulder. The creature froze at the touch. No one had ever touched it before. In its brief existence, it had only known pain and confusion and the harsh voices of people shouting orders. But this touch was different. It was gentle and warm and somehow comforting. For the first time since waking up in the laboratory, the creature felt something other than fear or anger. It felt a strange sensation that it had no name for. If it had known human words, it might have called it kindness. The alarms continued ringing throughout the station, but in that corridor, 2 very different beings stood together in a moment of unexpected peace. Neither of them knew it yet, but this simple act of compassion would change everything. 3 days had passed since the incident in Corridor 7, and Station Omega-7 had become a very different place. Dr. Yuna stood in the observation room, watching through reinforced glass as Minho sat on the floor with Subject 47. The creature, which Minho had started calling Gaon, was learning to use eating utensils. It held a spoon in its clawed hand with surprising gentleness, trying to copy the way Minho moved his own spoon. "This is impossible," muttered Dr. Lee, who stood beside Yuna. "No weapon should be able to learn domestic behaviors. We designed it to hunt and kill, not to eat soup." Yuna made notes on her tablet as she watched. The human DNA integration was more successful than we anticipated. Look at its neural activity patterns. On the screen next to the window, colorful waves showed Jian's brain activity. When the creature was alone, the patterns looked chaotic and aggressive, similar to Void, swarm creatures. But when Minho was present, the patterns changed completely. They became organized, calm, almost human-like. "It only responds this way to Minho," observed Dr. Kang. "When security personnel try to approach, Subject 47 becomes defensive and hostile. That was putting it mildly. 2 days ago, Commander Jinwoo had tried to enter the containment room with a full security team. Jian had immediately positioned itself between them and Minho, its body transforming into a clearly threatening posture. Its claws had extended, armor plates had shifted to protect vital areas, and a low growling sound had filled the room. The security team had their weapons drawn and ready to fire when Minho stepped forward and placed his hand on Gaon's arm. Within seconds, the creature had relaxed and returned to its normal appearance. "We need to understand what is happening here," Yuna said. "This behavior was not programmed. It should not be possible." She walked to her computer terminal and pulled up the genetic analysis reports. For 3 days, she had been studying tissue samples from Gaon, trying to understand how the creature had developed beyond its original design. The human genetic material is interacting with dormant sequences in the Catherian DNA, she explained to her team. These sequences were thought to be inactive, but exposure to human emotional responses has awakened them. Dr. Lee frowned. "What kind of sequences?" "Social bonding pathways, empathy circuits, neural networks designed for complex relationships." Yuna highlighted sections of genetic code on her screen. The ancient Catharans were highly social creatures. They lived in family groups and formed strong emotional bonds with each other. "So Subject 47 is not just a weapon," Dr. Kang said slowly. "It is a social being that needs companionship to function properly." Yuna nodded. "And it has chosen Minho as its primary social bond. This is why it only trusts him." In the containment room, Minho was teaching Gaon simple words in Korean. The creature repeated each word carefully, its voice deep but surprisingly gentle. When it successfully pronounced a word correctly, Minho would smile and nod encouragingly. Gaon seemed to understand that this meant it had done well, and would make a sound that might have been pleasure. "Incredible," whispered Dr. Lee. "It is learning language at the same rate as a human child, but with the cognitive capacity of an adult." The door to the observation room opened, and Commander Jinwoo entered. His expression was serious, and he carried a sealed data pad that indicated classified information. "Dr. Yuna, we need to talk," he said. "Coalition Command has been reviewing our reports about Subject 47. Yuna turned away from the window. "What is their assessment?" "They want immediate deployment. The swarm has broken through our defenses at the Kepler system. 17 colonies are under attack. They need our weapon deployed within 48 hours. Dr. Kang looked shocked. "But Subject 47 is not ready for combat deployment. We still do not understand its psychological state." Commander Jinwoo activated his data pad and showed them the latest battle reports. Images of devastated planets filled the screen. Cities reduced to rubble. Populations either dead or converted into more swarm creatures. "Command does not care about psychological states," Jinwoo said grimly. "They care about stopping the swarm before it reaches the core systems. Subject 47 has shown combat capabilities beyond anything we have ever seen. They want it weaponized and deployed immediately." Yuna felt a cold knot forming in her stomach. "What about Minho?" The creature will not cooperate without him. Command is aware of that situation. Minho will be reassigned as Subject 47's handler. He will accompany it into combat zones. That is insane, Dr. Lee protested. Minho is a maintenance engineer, not a military operative. He has no combat training. Neither did most of the colonists who are dying right now, Jinwoo replied harshly. Then his voice softened. I do not like this any more than you do. But we are running out of options. Through the observation window, they could see Gion suddenly look up from its meal. The creature's head turned toward the observation room, as if it could sense the tension in the air. Its eyes met Yuna's through the glass, and she felt a chill run down her spine. There was intelligence in those eyes, not just animal cunning or programmed responses, but genuine awareness. Gion knew it was being watched and evaluated. It understood that decisions were being made about its future. Minho noticed the creature's change in behavior and followed its gaze to the observation window. He waved at the scientists, his smile open and friendly. But Gion did not wave. It continued staring at them with an expression that looked almost sad. There is something else, Commander Jinwoo continued. The alien members of the Coalition Council are becoming nervous about Subject 47. They are saying that creating such a weapon was a mistake. Why? Asked Dr. Yuna. Because it is too human. They expected a mindless killing machine that would follow orders without question. Instead, we have created something that forms emotional bonds and makes its own decisions. Jinwoo showed them another report on his datapad. 3 council members have already called for Subject 47's termination. They believe it is too dangerous to deploy and too unpredictable to control. Dr. Yuna looked back at the containment room. Minho was now reading to Gion from a book he had brought from his quarters. The creature listened intently, occasionally asking questions about words it did not understand. They want to destroy it, she said quietly. Some of them do. Others want to remove the emotional elements and create more copies without the psychological complications. That would kill everything that makes Gion special, Dr. Kang protested. Gion? Jinwoo asked. That is what Minho calls it. It means building or construction in Korean. He says the creature is building itself into something new every day. Commander Jinwoo was quiet for a long moment. We have 48 hours to make a decision. Either we deploy Subject 47 as requested, or Command will send their own team to take control of the situation. As if sensing the gravity of the conversation, Gion stood up and walked to the window. It placed one clawed hand against the glass and looked directly at Yuna. For a moment, she felt as if the creature was trying to communicate something important. Then Gion turned back to Minho and said something in halting galactic standard. The words were simple, but their meaning was profound. Friend Minho teach Gion choose. Gion want choose too. The scientists looked at each other in amazement. The creature was not just learning language and social behaviors. It was developing the concept of free will. In 48 hours, they would all learn what choices a perfect weapon might make when given the freedom to choose. The attack came without warning. Minho was in the containment room with Gion, showing him pictures from Earth on his tablet. The creature was fascinated by images of forests and oceans, places it had never seen but somehow understood were beautiful. They were looking at a photograph of cherry blossoms when the first explosion shook the station. Emergency lights began flashing immediately. The pleasant hum of the air recycling system changed to an urgent whine. Through the speakers, Commander Jinwoo's voice filled every room on the station. All personnel to battle stations. We are under attack by Void Swarm forces. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Gion stood up quickly, his entire body changing. The gentle creature that had been admiring flowers just seconds before was gone. In its place stood something that looked like it had been designed for war. Armor plates shifted across its skin. Its hands became claws. Its eyes began to glow with a fierce light. But unlike the confused and frightened creature from a week ago, Gion now moved with purpose. It walked to the containment room door and placed its hand against the lock mechanism. Metal groaned and sparked as the creature forced the door open. Gion, wait, Minho called out. but the creature was already moving into the corridor. Minho grabbed his tablet and followed. The hallways of Station Omega-7 were filled with running people and flashing lights. Scientists hurried toward emergency shelters while security teams ran in the opposite direction, toward whatever was attacking them. Gian moved through the chaos like a hunter following a scent. Its head turned from side to side, and it made soft, clicking sounds as if it was listening for something specific. Then it suddenly changed direction and began moving faster. "What do you hear?" Minho asked as he tried to keep up. "Swarm," Gian replied in its deep voice. "Many swarm. Inside station. Now." They reached the junction of 3 corridors when they saw the first enemy. The void swarm creature was unlike anything Minho had ever seen. It looked like a cross between an insect and a nightmare, with too many legs and eyes that glowed like hot coals. Dark liquid dripped from its mouth as it tore through a security barrier. Behind the creature came more of its kind. Dozens of them poured through a hole they had burned in the station's hull. Some were small and fast, others were large and heavily armored. All of them moved with the same terrible purpose. Gian did not hesitate. It charged toward the swarm creatures with incredible speed. Its claws cut through the first enemy like it was made of paper. Black blood sprayed across the walls as Gian fought with deadly precision. But this was not mindless violence. Even as it fought, Gian protected the humans around it. When a swarm creature tried to attack a wounded security officer, Gian immediately positioned itself between them. When falling debris threatened to crush a group of scientists, the creature caught the metal beam and held it until they could escape. Minho watched in amazement as Gian systematically cleared the corridor of enemies. The creature that had learned to eat soup was now displaying combat skills that exceeded anything the military had imagined. "Minho, get to the emergency shelter," ordered Sergeant Park, one of the security officers. "This area is not safe." But Minho shook his head. "Gian needs me here. It fights better when I am nearby." This was true. Whenever Minho moved too far away, Gian would become distracted and look around to make sure he was safe. But when Minho stayed close, the creature fought with focused efficiency. They moved deeper into the station, following the path of destruction left by the swarm. In the science section, they found Dr. Yuna and her team barricaded inside the main laboratory. Swarm creatures were trying to break down the reinforced door. Gian eliminated the attackers quickly, then used its claws to carefully cut through the door without harming the people inside. "Thank goodness you are safe," Dr. Yuna said, as she emerged from the laboratory. "The swarm broke through our outer defenses. They are everywhere." "How many?" asked Minho. "We count at least 200 individual creatures, but there is something worse. Our sensors detected a queen among them." Gian's entire body tensed when it heard this word. "Queen dangerous. Queen make more swarm from people." Dr. Yuna nodded grimly. "If the queen reaches the populated areas of the station, it can convert our people into new swarm creatures. We have to stop it." They made their way toward the central hub where the station's main population lived and worked. Along the way, they encountered more swarm creatures. Each time, Gian faced the same terrible choice. Some of the creatures they fought were no longer entirely swarm. They had once been human or alien crew members who had been partially converted. Their bodies were twisted and changed, but traces of their original selves remained. The first time Gian encountered one of these hybrid creatures, it stopped fighting completely. The thing that had been Dr. Kim from the physics department shambled toward them, its eyes pleading for help even as swarm tentacles writhed from its back. "Gian, you have to stop it," Minho said gently. "It is not Dr. Kim anymore." But Gian refused to attack. Instead, it grabbed the hybrid creature carefully and used its claws to cut away the swarm parasites without killing the host. Dr. Kim collapsed, badly injured but alive and human again. "Impossible," whispered Dr. Yuna. "No one has ever successfully separated a host from swarm parasites. But Gian had done it. Somehow the creature could distinguish between the alien parasites and the original person. Its enhanced senses allowed it to perform surgical strikes that no other weapon could manage. They saved 6 more people this way before reaching the central hub. But there, they found something that tested Gion's abilities beyond anything it had faced before. The Swarm Queen was enormous, nearly 4 meters tall and covered in glistening black armor. It stood in the middle of the hub's main plaza, surrounded by dozens of its offspring. Worse, it had already begun converting captured humans into new swarm creatures. "There are too many," said Sergeant Park over the radio. "My security teams cannot get close enough to engage." Gion studied the situation carefully. Its enhanced brain calculated attack patterns and defensive positions. Then it turned to Minho, with an expression that looked almost apologetic. "Dangerous fight," it said. "Gion might get hurt. Might not protect Minho good." Minho understood what the creature was really saying. This battle would require Gion to use all of its combat programming, to become the perfect weapon it had been designed to be. There might not be room for gentleness or protection. "I trust you," Minho said simply. "Do what you need to do." Gion nodded once, then transformed more completely than it ever had before. It grew larger, its armor became thicker, and its claws extended to their full length. For a moment it looked exactly like the mindless killing machine the Coalition had wanted to create. But when it moved into battle against the Swarm Queen, it did not fight like a mindless weapon. It fought like a protector who had chosen to defend the people it cared about. The battle that followed would be remembered by everyone who witnessed it. It was a test not just of Gion's combat abilities, but of everything it had learned about making choices between destruction and mercy. The end, the station would discover what kind of weapon they had truly created. The battle between Gion and the Swarm Queen lasted 23 minutes. When it was over, the central hub looked like a war zone, but Station Omega-7 was safe. The Queen lay dead, and the remaining swarm creatures had fled or been destroyed. Gion stood in the middle of the destruction, breathing heavily. Green liquid dripped from several wounds on its arms and chest, but it was alive. More importantly, it had saved 43 people who had been partially converted by the Queen. Instead of killing them, Gion had found ways to remove the swarm parasites while keeping the hosts alive. "Medical teams to the central hub, Commander," Jinwoo announced over the station intercom. "We have survivors who need immediate treatment." Minho ran to Gion's side. The creature was trying to help injured people, but it was clearly exhausted. Its armor had retracted, and it looked more like the gentle being Minho had come to know than the weapon it had become during the fight. "You did it," Minho said, placing his hand on Gion's shoulder. "You saved everyone." Gion looked around at the people it had rescued. Some were unconscious, others were crying with relief. All of them were alive because it had chosen mercy over the simple solution of destruction. "Gion, choose protect," it said quietly. "Choose save, not kill." Dr. Yuna arrived with a medical team to treat Gion's wounds. As she worked, she studied the creature with amazement. "Your healing factor is incredible. These wounds would be fatal to most beings, but you are already recovering." But their moment of victory was short-lived. Within an hour, Coalition Command was demanding a full report. Within 2 hours, transport ships were approaching the station. Within 4 hours, officials from the highest levels of the galactic government were walking through Station Omega-7's corridors. Commander Jinwoo called an emergency meeting in the main conference room. Present were Dr. Yuna and her team, several military officers and 3 Coalition Council members who had traveled from the capital world. "The test results exceed all expectations," announced Admiral Chen, reading from a datapad. "Subject 47 eliminated a full swarm assault force, including a Queen-level entity. Combat effectiveness is rated at maximum levels." The Coalition Council members looked pleased, but Minho noticed they kept glancing nervously at the security footage from the battle. Gion's decision to save converted humans instead of simply killing them had not gone unnoticed. "However," continued Admiral Chen, "there are concerns about the weapon's unpredictable behavior patterns." Counselor Vrak, a tall alien with blue skin and silver eyes, spoke next. "Subject 47 repeatedly chose inefficient combat solutions. It wasted time and energy attempting to preserve enemy-infected personnel. This behavior could compromise future missions." Dr. Yuna stood up. "Those people were not enemies. They were victims who needed rescue." Subject 47 found a way to save them that no other weapon could have managed. That is precisely the problem, replied Counselor Lith, another alien with features like a bird of prey. We need weapons that follow orders, not weapons that make moral judgments. Subject 47's emotional attachments make it unreliable. Minho felt anger building in his chest. These beings were talking about Gaon like it was a broken machine instead of a living person who had just saved dozens of lives. Coalition Command has made a decision, Admiral Chen announced. We will proceed with mass production of Subject 47 variants. However, the emotional response systems will be removed from future models. We need efficient weapons, not conflicted individuals. What about Gaon? Minho asked. What about the original? The room fell silent. Finally, Counselor Vrak answered. Subject 47 will be studied to understand how the emotional systems developed. Then it will be decommissioned. You mean killed, Dr. Yuna said flatly. The original prototype has served its purpose. It proved the concept works. Now we can create improved versions without the psychological complications. Minho stood up so quickly his chair fell over. Gaon is not a prototype. It is a person. It has thoughts and feelings and the right to live. It is a weapon, Counselor Lith said, coldly. Weapons do not have rights. Before anyone could respond, the conference room door opened. Gaon walked in, moving slowly and carefully. It looked around the room at all the officials and officers, then focused on Minho. Friend Minho upset, it observed. Why sad faces? Commander, Jinwoo cleared his throat. Subject 47, you should not be here. This is a classified meeting. Gaon know about meeting, the creature replied calmly. Gaon here talk about future. About new weapons like Gaon but different. Admiral Chen frowned. How could you possibly know about classified discussions? Station have many air vents, Gaon said simply. Sound travel through vents. Gaon have good hearing. The creature had been listening to their conversations. It knew exactly what the coalition planned to do with it, and with future versions of itself. Gaon walked to the center of the room and looked directly at the coalition council members. When it spoke, its voice was clear and steady. Gaon, understand, you want weapons that only kill, want weapons that follow orders without thinking, want weapons that not care about saving people. That is correct, Counselor Vrak replied. Efficient weapons win wars. Gaon was quiet for a long moment. Then it said something that shocked everyone in the room. Gaon choose different way. Gaon want protect all life, not just human life. Want save enemies too when possible. Want be weapon that brings peace, not just death. You do not get to choose, Counselor Lith snapped. You are property of the coalition military. No, Gaon said firmly. Gaon choose. Choice make Gaon different from machine. Choice make Gaon person. Dr. Yuna stepped forward. The creature is right. It has demonstrated self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and moral reasoning. By any scientific definition, Subject 47 is a sentient being. Sentient beings have rights under coalition law, added Commander Jinwoo quietly. Rights that include the right to exist and the right to make choices about their own lives. The council members looked uncomfortable. They had not expected this legal complication. Admiral Chen consulted his datapad. This situation requires review by the Coalition Ethics Committee. Until they make a ruling, Subject 47 will remain on Station Omega-7 under observation. What about the new weapons program? Asked Dr. Yuna. That will proceed as planned. We can create emotionless versions without needing to study the original further. But Gaon shook its head. New weapons will fail. We'll be strong, but not smart. We'll win battles but lose war. Explain, demanded Counselor Vrak. Swarm not just enemy army. Swarm make people choose between fear and hope. Weapons that only bring fear make more enemies. Weapons that bring hope make allies. Gaon looked around the room at all the faces watching it. Gaon fought Swarm Queen not because orders say fight. Fought because Gaon choose protect friends. Friends fight harder when know someone care about them. Minho understood what Gaon was trying to explain. It is saying that compassion makes people stronger, not weaker. When soldiers know they are fighting to protect someone they care about, they fight better than when they are just following orders. The creature may have a point, admitted Commander Jinwoo. Morale and motivation are important factors in military effectiveness. The meeting continued for another hour, but the real decision had already been made. Jian had proven that it was more than just a weapon. It was a person who had chosen to use its abilities to protect others, and that choice made all the difference. 3 days later, the Coalition Ethics Committee made their ruling. Subject 47 was officially recognized as a sentient being with full rights under galactic law. It was given the name Jian at its own request and assigned the rank of Special Warfare Consultant. The mass production program was cancelled. Instead, the Coalition decided to work with Gaon to develop new training methods that would help their soldiers fight with both strength and compassion. Minho was officially promoted to Senior Cultural Liaison, a job that mainly involved helping Gaon understand different aspects of galactic civilization. It was the best job he had ever had. 6 months later, when the next swarm attack came, Gaon led a mixed force of humans and aliens in the defense of the Kepler colonies. They did not just defeat the enemy. They saved thousands of converted beings and turned many swarm creatures back into the people they had once been. The war was not over, but for the first time in years, the galaxy had hope that it could be won without losing their humanity in the process. And it all started because one maintenance engineer chose to hug a monster instead of running away from it.